This is the Business Storytelling Show, a top global marketing podcast listened to in more than 100 countries, live streamed on social media, and broadcast on DBTV. Christoph Trapp chats with industry leaders to help your company tell better business stories. Here's today's episode.
Hey, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? I'm back from hip surgery, still walking around with this cane, which you can also buy on Amazon, by the way. I'm not sure that's actually listed in my carousel, but we are live streaming to Amazon today on Prime Day on the live stream. Of course, on the podcast version, that's in November. Prime Day is long gone. So you know what? How do we make things sticky? How do we stand out to people? And this is an interesting book, Brain Glue by James Bond. And, you know, it is so difficult to stand out anymore, to have people remember what's going on and what's unique about you. So how do we do that, right? I do it just by kind of trying to make it fun, share my own stories, right? So you can remember some of these things better. But what else can we do? So excited today to welcome to the show James Bond, the author of Brain Glue. And let's dive in. How do we make our ideas stickier? Welcome.
Hi, Christoph. Yeah. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you too. So, I mean, you know, feedback time here, James. Do we fist bumping? Is that going to help us stand out in the podcast world or no?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Boom. Already winning. Already like your comments. But so kind of give us some background on why the book, why is this an important topic? And, you know, what do people need to do to be memorable?
So I have some breakthrough things that I've uncovered. And so it's really blowing people's minds. But let's start with this simple concept. So you leave your home and you're driving down the street and you see all these homes or apartments that are down the street. You don't look at them every day because you saw them already. But one day you're driving down the street and out of one of the windows, you see flames coming out and you stop and you go, huh? What's that? My neighbor's house is on fire. First, do they know it? And second is, are they going to burn down my house? That's the same concept that we go through with ads and with concepts, etc. Is that, you know, people tell us stuff and we go, okay, in money out there, in money or out the other, etc. Over and over and over again. We see ad. And it doesn't stand out because we're so bombarded with information, ads and concepts and texting on our phones and everything else, that it takes a lot to wake up the brain so that it becomes aware of what we're offering. And so let me give you a funny example. So I discovered Brain Glue. I'll give you examples of how I uncovered it and where it came from, but let me give you this sort of funky example. Brain Glue has 14 brain triggers, and one of the brain triggers is trigger words, okay? So Richard Branson, you guys know who billionaire Richard Branson is? What does Richard Branson have in common with olive oil? I'll give you a moment. Virgin, the word virgin. Virgin olive oil and Virgin Airlines. Originally it was Virgin Records and all that stuff, okay? Virgin is a trigger word. How about the word dirty? Okay? Would you think that the word dirty, putting the word dirty in your book or your product, or if you have a movie you created, would help? How about Dirty Harry? He wasn't really dirty, was he? How about Dirty Dancing? I'm old enough to remember the Dirty Dozen. There was the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I sent an email to major magazines that I want to talk about my book, to review it and talk about it. And I included the word dirty. And I said, the dirty truth about an article you posted. And it's amazing, almost instantly, literally within an hour, two writers from two major magazines responded because I used the word dirty, you know, the dirty truth about an article you wrote, and I explain inside it what it is. This is just one of 14 brain triggers that wake up the brain where you go like, huh? You know?
You know what's interesting about the triggers though? So like so I use them too in my email marketing campaigns, right? Mm-hmm. I try not to overdo them. But I certainly use them. I look at what words work best. I review, especially for email marketing. I do review Jay Schwedelin's content and emails and podcasts that he does. He always shares the latest tips and tricks on what's currently working. But if somebody, and this was kind of a trigger for me, James, if somebody were to send me an email and say, "Your dirty article," whatever, like, what I would do with that email? I would not even read it, because I get so much junk. People pitching me, people doing whatever. In fact, I think you're probably one of the few people who pitched me and who got on the show as an editorial guest, right? So not a sponsored episode. But so I don't know, maybe you used the trigger word on me and got me, but at the end of the day, people overdo it too. So how do you make sure that, yes, you use those trigger words, but that you're not overdoing it? Where's the line to being spammy?
Well, there are two issues. And the first issue is, I hate to quote Bill Cosby because he's not our favorite guy anymore, but he had a really good quote. And he said, "I don't know the secret of success, but the secret of failure is trying to please everyone. You're never going to please everyone." Okay. So that's the first thing. But the second one is, brain triggers there are lots of different brain triggers. Let me tell you how I discovered brain triggers in the first place. Okay. I live in Southern California now. I lived here for about 37 years. I named our middle daughter. We gave her the initials LA, so I'd remember how old is Lauren. Okay, we know how long we've been in Southern California. I'm originally from Montreal, and I started an advertising agency. We worked our way up and eventually won major clients: Kraft Foods, Timex, Watches, Avon Cosmetics, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's. Their world headquarters is in Montreal. And I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. Logical reasons why you should not do drugs. And I lost. And I deserved to lose when I saw the ad that won. And the ad that won was a guy holding an egg saying, "This is your brain. Crack the shell and drop the egg into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?" It's not logical. And yet it's profound in how it impacts us. And I freaked out. First, I knew this was much better than the ad we came up with. We had logical reasons why you shouldn't do drugs. But the second thing I realized is this is emotional selling, not logical, emotional selling. There are two main people. There's Gerald Zaltman, a Harvard business professor, and Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist. Excuse me. And they discovered that more than 90% of buying decisions are emotionally triggered. Excuse me. Logic could be a part, but it's the emotion centers of the brain that need to be activated to get the action and the results you want. If you're trying to sell something or sell an idea, and so it freaked me out. And I realized that school doesn't teach emotional selling. Libraries, they have superficial things, but they don't really teach emotional selling. And so what I did was I created a passion box where I put a box next to my computer. And every time I saw an ad or heard something that's emotionally powerful, rather than overanalyzing it, I dumped it in the box, like "your brain on drugs." I wrote it on a 3x5 card and I put it in the box in the hopes that eventually I'd have so many examples that I'd be able to uncover how emotional selling works, deep down how it works. More than a decade of putting things in the passion box, we moved to California, Southern California, and I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me about this incredible book he wrote, Men, Women, and Relationships, one of the best relationship books I'd ever seen and most people have ever seen. But it only sold a few thousand copies. And he's telling me that he came up with the crazy idea to change the name from Men, Women, and Relationships to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And then he tweaked the content just a little so that it was consistent with the title. It had examples of it inside of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. What do you think happened? Almost overnight, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus sold 500,000 copies, then 1 million, then 2 million, then 5 million. In my book, I say he sold 10 million copies. I know Steve Harrison that helped him with marketing, and he said, "No, you're wrong." I said, "Sorry." He said, no, we're already over 50 million books sold. 50. He went from 20,000 books with the old title to 50 million books when he changed the new title. 50 million books was mind-blowing. So I wrote Men Are From Mars on a 3x5 card so I'd remember it, even though I had the book. And then suddenly I realized he used a metaphor. Men aren't really from Mars. I mean, some ladies out there, some of you probably think we're from a different planet, understandably. But men are from Mars, women are from Venus is a metaphor. And when I got home, I decided to dump the passion box on my bed and look for, see if metaphors is the only or main way to generate emotional selling. And I realized it's not. It's one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I thought my brain was going to explode. So I suddenly realized when you include a metaphor, when you include a brain trigger like a metaphor or one of the other 14 brain triggers in what you say or what you post or what you advertise, it radically boosts your ability to get people to buy your products, buy your services, and agree with your concepts. That's why it blew my mind, because I started realizing, wow, President John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's chiasmus. I mean, there's these
lots of examples shared already. So tell me if any of these are more recent. I'd be very interested in that. So for example, like Dirty Dancing, like that movie came out a long time ago, right? Very, very different time period, quite frankly, like 3 TV stations. Today, I have more streaming services than 3, right? I mean, that's the world we're now in.
Right.
Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus came out like 2009. Even that's a very different time period, right? I mean, that was the time probably when I was still using Amazon to buy books only. Today I buy everything on Amazon, right? So my question is, and maybe you shared some more recent examples, and I'm sure there is some out there, but how does it work today where like I can do everything you just said and people will still not hear it because maybe my budget isn't high enough, or maybe I didn't hit the right channel? But it's like the stuff that gets thrown at consumers. I mean, maybe I'm just oversensitive here because I live in today's world and not 30 years ago. But isn't it much harder to pull this off today than it was 20 years ago,
No.
13 years ago?
No, it's just as easy today as it is back then. And the reason is because our brains are still work the same way. Let me give you a really simple example. Do you spend money on, and people out there in the audience, do you spend money on social media advertising? Here's a woman recently, she hasn't been doing this for that long, who has more than 5 million fans. And guess how much money she spent? You know how much money she spent? Zero, nothing. How much are you spending to try to, get a lot of fans on Facebook? What did she do? She's a stay-at-home mom who decided she wanted to start a Facebook page, and she wanted to, attract a lot of people. And she was thinking, so what does mommy need? Mommy needs time to herself. Oh, it's exhausting. Mommy needs, a rest. Oh, I know what mommy needs. Mommy needs vodka. She created a Facebook page called Mommy Needs Vodka. I remember how I was one of the fans. So, I saw a post and it was funny. It was really funny. I went, okay, that's pretty funny. Then I saw it's from Mommy Needs Vodka. What the heck's Mommy Needs Vodka? I clicked on the link, took me right to her page. I saw some of the other content she had, and I went, this is really fun. And I became one of over 5 million fans. It's common. I have this construction company I work with. It took them 10 years to reach 2 million of sales. That's not bad. 2 million of sales. There are 3 partners, okay? 10 years and it reached 2 million in sales. In 1 year, I took them to 10 million in sales. And then 2 years later, we reached 32 million in sales by applying Brain Glue. So how did I do that? By the way, I took them from 2 to 10 million in sales in 1 year, and they razzed me. They said, hey, Bond, it was supposed to be 12 million. I said, shut up. They had so much money. They bought each other a brand new BMW, the biggest like BMW you can get. I mean, they were rolling in dough. They couldn't believe how easy it was. So what did we do? I pulled out a whiteboard and I said, let's make a list of all the different types of clients you've gone after. And so it took us about an hour. We came up with this, this company, this type of company, et cetera, as a construction company. I said, okay, let's play a game. Let's pretend you're only going to go after one of all these types of clients. Who's it going to be? And they went, well, we don't want to say no to if we have regular clients that we come that, want us to build homes and stuff like that. So I got it, but we're playing a game. Choose one. So it took them a few minutes and they finally said, fire restoration for insurance companies. I didn't know what that was, so I asked them for feedback. They said, we've done it 3 times, one for two for one client and one for another one, where they're an insurance company and they had a client that had a fire and they needed somebody to go in there and fix the building. And they said there are 2 things we check for. One is the frame damaged? If the frame is damaged, we have to tear down the whole building. But if it's not damaged, then we put it up and rebuild the part of the home that's burnt and make sure it's not going to catch fire again. Okay. So what's a keyword? What's a word that comes into their mind when they're ready to hire someone like you? We thought about it and said fire, right? Fire. Here's good. Why don't we call you guys the fire extinguisher? For insurance companies, you don't put out the fire, but you're the fire extinguisher. Whenever you guys have a fire, call us. We're your fire extinguisher. We got the website firex.com. I went with them to their first 2 clients, the prospects. And something funny happened. So we started explaining, think of us as your fire extinguisher. Whenever you have a client that has a fire, call us. And we've streamlined it so we can really help you and be more effective. And the clients would laugh as they were buying, they were laughing. But, whenever somebody had a fire, guess who they called? They went like, oh, I got a client has a fire. Oh, fire extinguisher. I have to call the fire extinguisher. Almost overnight, they went from 2 million to 10 million in 1 year and then 32 million 2 years later. And the reason is because we understand how the brain works. When you understand how the brain works, you can apply these brain tools. And I'm an old guy, so I'm going to give you lots of old examples like plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is, okay? Kurt Cobain called his song Smells Like Teen Spirit. Ew, smells like Teen Spirit? What does that smell like? A locker room? No, but he's triggering the mind because he's activating emotion. We have, all the different emotions we have, smell and taste and everything else. And when you can activate those, whether it's 10 or 20 years ago, like some of the examples I use, or today, it's the same, that it triggers the brain. So the brain goes, that's interesting. And I mean, when I bought Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, I remember this in a bookstore. Now it's different because we're online, but it's the same concept. Okay, they're going down the street and you want flames coming out of your window. And I'm looking at all the books over there. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. What? Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? What the hell is that all about? Picked it up. I started looking through it. And then I've got it in my hand. I have a better chance of buying it because I have it in my hand. And so, yeah, the brain triggers are embedded in us. Does that make sense, Christoph?
It does make sense. But so the one thing I want to circle back on is the whole thing about, not going after every client that potentially wants to give you money. And, not every dollar is worth the same, I guess, right? I mean, if you have the wrong client, how's that going to work? But so if you have the right persona in mind, the right ICP, right, ideal customer profile, I mean, it becomes easier, I guess, right, to stand out because you know who you're after, you know why, and now you have the message that you're trying to send to them. Is that true or not?
Yeah. I mean, we start with logic, but we have to understand that emotions sell. So we start with logic first. We have to be clear on who it is that we're targeting and what's important to them. But we still have to stand out. I'm going to give you a crazy example, okay? A lot of people don't know this about Marilyn Monroe. So Marilyn Monroe was originally Norma Jean, I think Mortensen or something was her last name. And her agent said, Marilyn is a better name than Norma Jean. So she agreed to change her name to Marilyn. And I believe it was her stepfather named Monroe. So she was Marilyn Monroe, which is alliteration, by the way, the repetition of sounds. By Coca-Cola, PayPal, TikTok, these all use alliteration. Is it a coincidence? No, it works. But that wasn't the only thing she did. So she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. Then she loved Jean Harlow, who was in the early days of the movies, she was really a big star. And she had platinum blonde hair. So Marilyn decided to get platinum blonde hair. She actually went to the same hairdresser as Jean Harlow to make sure the hair was the same color as Jean Harlow, Marilyn's hair. So she's got that. So she's got the name Marilyn Monroe and platinum blonde hair, and she's good looking. And she's got a beauty mark on her face, so she decided to cover it up. But one day she's looking at photographs of Jean Harlow, and she goes, wait a second. In some photographs, she has a beauty mark on her cheek, And in some, it's on her chin. I bet she doesn't even have a beauty mark. I bet she put a dot on her face to bring attention to her face. It's asymmetry, okay? We like symmetry. You know, my wife, it drives her nuts when she sees a guy and he's got maybe a lazy eye, because she goes, you can cover up half the face and he looks like one person. You cover up the other half, he looks like another person. Well, she likes symmetry, as most of us do. But asymmetry stands out. So Marilyn, when she realized she's got the beauty, Jean Harlow is playing with the beauty mark, she decided, instead of hiding the beauty mark on her face, to make it darker. And she believed it had a tremendous impact on her success. Let's go forward. Cindy Crawford is a supermodel. When she was a kid, she had a beauty mark on a birthmark on her chin, above her lip on the left side. And she begged her mom to get it removed. Mommy, please get it removed. And her mommy didn't get it. And she said, I am so happy my mom didn't get it removed. I believe it had a major impact on why I became a supermodel, because people see this dot on my face, okay? So how does that relate to any of us? By the way, what made me think of it was famous advertiser in the early days, David Ogilvy, was doing an ad for Hathaway shirts, by the way, which is so successful that Warren Buffett bought it. That's why his company is called Berkshire Hathaway. It's Hathaway shirts. But how did David Ogilvy make Hathaway shirts famous? Well, if you're doing an ad for a full-page ad for a shirt, what do? You have a good-looking guy wearing a shirt, nice pair of pants, shoes, and a nice background. It looks like every other shirt ad. What did he do? He put an eye patch on the guy. The guy wasn't a pirate, but he put an eye patch on the guy, and the headlines were the man in the Hathaway shirt. People would read it wondering, why does the guy have a eye patch, and they wouldn't get it. But what David Ogilvy recognized was, if I can put something on one side of the face and not the other side of the face, I can grab attention. Okay, well, that works with guys. Jason Momoa, the guy who plays Aquaman, one of his eyebrows is missing hair. If you look at it, you'll notice it. It stands out from the crowd. How about the boxer Mike Tyson? He's got a beauty mark on one side of his face. And these people recognize today, even though, yeah, it happened a long time ago with Marilyn Monroe and all that stuff, but they recognize today that still works. That asymmetry, you go like, oh, what's that? And it wakes up the brain. Does that make sense?
It does. And sometimes it's not for the positive, certainly, but it certainly
True.
gets attention. Because everything has to be very symmetric, and, it drives me crazy when things don't line up. And certainly I'm not a designer that keeps track of that. James, time always flies when you have fun. So we are out of time, but if you can tell us in about 15 seconds, who should reach out to you? Who do you work with? How do people connect with you? Really appreciate you coming on, and continued luck with your book.
Thank you very much. And if you go to Brain Glue on Amazon, if you go to yesbrainglue.com, that'll give you a page that gives you a ton of information on it, which was really fun. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, if you're hoping to get into business, or even if you want to be a leader in your company or in an organization, Brain Glue is going to really blow your mind, because it gives you the tools to get there. So yesbrainglue.com will really, that'll get you to see a lot more about how Brain Glue works. Yesbrainglue.com.
Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review The Business Storytelling Show on your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. See you then.